Hello and welcome to the ADHD Goals Podcast. Now, I think we have got a first today. We've got our first returning guest, and it is Stephanie Ward. She is of the Spicy Brain Collective, and she was on a couple of months ago telling us about how she helps ADHD entrepreneurs and neurodiverse entrepreneurs with their online businesses. So go and check that episode out if you haven't listened to it already. And she is back because we want to talk about AI, but also we've just been chatting before we hit record, and a lot has happened for Steph since we last spoke. So how are you today, Steph?
Better than I've been for a while, I think, is probably the best way of describing it. Yeah, everything's been a bit chaotic. Might have run away with the circus, but I am back now.
Yeah. I mean, there was quite a few exciting is maybe a word I would use, things that have gone on. I just wonder how much of that you want to share with the listeners to just keep them up to date.
Yeah, I think I've had the most ADHD summer ever. So I did this really cool business project up in Scotland with a very old friend of mine, very fun. And I came back from that with some quite profound realizations. I think when we get to sit in silence and let our brains process, I actually got a nap during the day because we were doing like bushcraft. And I don't do outdoors, so I had like daytime naps. I'm very much relaxed at a deep level. And I realized that things at home weren't quite what I would have expected at this point in my life. And there was a moment where I realized that I'd actually learned to be helpless in my personal relationship with my partner. And I decided on a whim, just one day, there was one minor conversation. And the next thing you know, I've broken up with the man I've been with for 12 years. 3 hours later, I've booked a flight to San Diego to spend a week with someone I've met twice in real life, a guy called David Fagan, who's a talent agent for top talent. And I just spent like a week just going around events. I went to an event with the fabulous Lisa Nichols. If you haven't seen the things she does, go and check her out. She's wonderful. I ended up going over to Temecula to see a friend, Diane, who was filming a TV show that day. I hung out with my friend Helmut, who was going to be the mayor of Atlanta in Georgia, just because he randomly happened to be at the same event. And I've got really good friends, a lady called Melanie Soloway, who does humanitarian aid trips in South Africa. And it turns out she used to be the deputy district attorney for Los Angeles County, right? And she's just this feral woman she's like a Pied Piper. If Melanie says come, you follow and you don't ask too many questions about it. So we just had the best time. We went to the Grand Canyon National Park and sat on a cliff 400 feet in the air. Yeah, it was just the most relaxing thing I could have done. So I'm back from that. I've been at a few conferences and events since because that's how I move. But yeah, breaking up with my boyfriend and running away with the circus was not on my 2025 bingo card. So I've got a lot to figure out right now because I've realized I've got no game with boys. So that's the whole situation.
And being in the news at all?
Oh, yes. And that. So yes, after I got back from the US, I had seen some rumblings online about our lovely friend, Donald Trump, and his stance on paracetamol causing autism. And I got a message from Metro News on the Monday saying, do you have an opinion on this? I was like, do I have an opinion? Yes. So I wrote a piece the day before it broke, essentially with my views, but I had to stay up for the live broadcast. So I wanted to make sure what I said reflected it. And honestly, I was horrified at what he was saying because not only has he said that something is harmless paracetamol, which has been repeatedly shown in both independent studies, sibling studies, peer-reviewed studies, not to cause any kind of neurodevelopmental issues whatsoever. He also revived all of the Andrew Wakefield research around the MMR vaccine that was around sort of the 1998, 1999 timeframe. And it's the reason that my own brother wasn't vaccinated because my mother thought it would cause autism. And I think it's a very damaging narrative to have out there. And my personal stance is stop trying to find out what caused me and just celebrate the magic that is me. Because I think the autistic brain and the way the condition presents in people brings some really powerful, useful skills to the workforce as much as anything else, but it makes them really interesting people. And I just really wish that they would stop trying to find a cause for it and just let us live our lives, stop treating us like some health crisis and just let us be the beautiful humans we are. So that was in Metro, it was online, and it was also published twice in print. So I've got it on my wall now. I'm so excited. I had most of my friends trying to find the paper that day just so I could have it up.
Yeah. I think, that paracetamol thing as well. I mean, there's also another way to look at what they're doing there as well. And I think it goes along parallel to sort of that traditional family thing that they've got going on where a woman should be there to give birth and stay at home. And taking things to make pregnancy easier is bad because you're going to give your child autism. I think that's another thing that they're sort of pushing as well. And I think it's all a bit scary, I think.
Yeah. They're just basically what they've done is they've created another stick for society to beat women with, is what they've done. We already torture ourselves enough during pregnancy because, oh my goodness, is being in the car too long going to mean I inhale gases and damage my child, or I can't eat blue cheese because my child might die, and I can't do this because I might sabotage my pregnancy. I can't exercise because I might tense too hard and break my waters. Like, we are scared enough during pregnancy without them taking away the one thing we can use pain relief, because pregnancy is not very comfortable. I don't know if you've ever carried a bowling ball around on your crotch, but that's what it feels like. I had a large child and my hips went at 26 weeks. So I was on crutches I was on tramadol when I was pregnant because I was in excruciating pain for nearly 3 months. I had to have an emergency C-section because I got to a point where I was in so much pain I could barely get to the bathroom. And I started the tramadol around the 32-week mark. Before that, I was only on paracetamol, and that was the only reprieve I got, was my 4 times a day paracetamol. And it didn't make my son autistic. Do you know what made my son autistic? Me and my ex-husband, who can tell you what a BMW is, even if it's debadged based on the alloy wheels. So I feel like that might be the reason and not the paracetamol.
Yeah, and it's not as if it's also suggesting that being autistic is wrong or something, that if you had the choice not to be, you wouldn't. It's a different way of being, and that's fine. It's just more a case of, let's make sure the society we live in is room for everybody.
Yeah. And there's more than enough space for all of us to be exactly who we are. Stop trying to find the cause and spend the money on putting the right adjustments in so that we can be the valuable members of society that we already are, that we're just not celebrated for.
And so, as a segue into the topic of today's episode, there are some tools that we can use that in this society that we live in, the expectations of what people should be able to do at work, we're in the neurodiverse space there's lots of things that people can struggle with. And AI has the possibility to help us do that. And that's what we want to really sort of look at today. So I wonder if you could sort of give us a bit of a broad scope of what you're finding interesting about AI at the moment and what you'd like to talk about today.
Yeah, I mean, so in the last year, we've seen a lot more people who are getting things like access to work that are getting funded for stuff like AI-based note takers, for example, or they get given things like ClickUp, which has the AI built in. Most platforms that we're using now has built-in AI or AI capabilities. And what's really cool about this is that when it comes to neurodivergence, we struggle with certain tasks. And my whole theory around this is, it's not the task that we struggle with on its own. It's the first and last 10% of the task. It's the getting started, getting the structure, getting the confidence, but then also the closing the loops at the end. And what I find really good about AI tools, things like ChatGPT, although I have mixed feelings on open source language models as the main source of AI that we use, but things like, Sintra or Copilot, all of these different things, what I love about them is that you can give it information and say, give me a starting point. And for a neurodivergent person who's stuck in task paralysis or struggling with executive dysfunction, what it does is it gives us that starting point that means we can do a lot more autonomously. It's things like, giving us the bare boards of a social media post. So if we're struggling to work out what will go well on LinkedIn today, we can ask it. And it can say, here are some things you could post about. Would you like me to draft a post for you? Yes, I would. Draft me one. But what worries me is that I think there's a lot you can do with AI. Right? We've got AI agents, which are going to be the future, if I'm honest with you. I think a lot of monotonous tasks do not need to be a human. There's a lot of things that an AI can look at and be like, do that. And if you give them the boundaries and the parameters, you can train that like an employee. You can give part of your brain to that, and it just takes care of that one task really well. But the problem is that people are becoming too reliant on AI. They're using it to formulate the entirety of something without actually validating whether it's true, actually fact-checking what the AI is putting out. What I'm seeing right now is that autistic people are using it to get facts, to get information. We know that the youth now aren't using Google to find things. They're using generative engines such as ChatGPT, which is why a lot of companies are shifting their focus from search engine optimization towards generative engine optimization. So when you go to ChatGPT and say, give me the 5 best business consultants, it's people who've done their GEO that are going to get spurned out of that. So we're not actually fact checking whether they are the best. What we're doing is it's pulling information that other people have said, this is the best person, and here's all the good things about them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just as biased as getting an opinion from another human in some ways.
Mm-hmm. So I think what you've touched upon there is something I probably want to just check in with the audience and make sure what we mean and understand by AI, because it's a booming topic at the moment and everything has got AI in it, the word AI in it, because everybody's going to think you're going to click on it if it has. And what you've sort of highlighted there is all the tools that we use already are integrating AI into it. We've probably all used ChatGPT. So when we say AI, we're probably thinking about that. But then you've also mentioned that there's agents, and those are things, when I think about agents, I'm thinking about those platforms like NAN, where you can plug in agents and get it to plug in different tools and remember stuff, and it can do things autonomously. And there's a really broad scope. It's like saying, what do you think about religion? And there's so many different, that one word in the person you say it to, that instantly triggers them to a point of view that they have. And you can't have a conversation about it if the person's got another point of view, because it's too big a word to talk about in context of what you mean. So I think it's important to sort of scale it down to what we mean by AI, and maybe the journey of tools and possibilities and leveling up of what we can mean by AI.
And I think as well, a lot of people don't have a full understanding of what AI is and the different levels of it. I think people say that they're an expert in AI. Well, actually, what they're an expert in is crafting a prompt for ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And from an entry-level perspective, ChatGPT is the most accessible. That's the bottom level. That is something, it's a chatbot-based thing where you can go and ask it a question, and the open source language model gives you answers based on its knowledge base. And that's really good in terms of, it's a bit like Google. You know, we go to it, we ask it a question, it gives us an answer. It can steer us a little bit. It can, based on what it learns, what's really good is that open source language models learn and bring more information. So you might ask it a question now, you might get a different answer in 6 months because it's learning all the time. Whereas things like the agent-based stuff, so what Jeannie McGilvery's building over at Autumn.ai is agent-based. It's very specific things, doing very specific tasks on very specific platforms with not a lot of scope for learning from external models. It's, you give it the information, you train it on what you know, it's given parameters around specific tasks, and it does something specific.
Yeah.
And I think when we think about AI uses for neurodivergence, they don't tend to be using things like the agents. What it is, things like ChatGPT or Sintra or Google Gemini, it's the open source language models where you can have a conversation with it. And I think the problem is that neurodivergence, we know that part of the neurodivergent profile is struggling with communication.
Yeah.
So a lot of us prefer to text rather than call, because you can have a chat over a text message much easier, you can formulate your thoughts. And I think there is this element of it feels like we're talking to someone, so it feels like we're getting more social juice as well. I think that's why people go down that route, and why that's probably the most common usage of AI in neurodivergence, is that because we like the chat access.
Yeah. And I think what you've sort of highlighted there, talking about the agents as well, I think just to throw another term in there, I would say automations. When we talk about automations, have been around for ages. And for anybody who's not sure what I mean by that, like think about you do an email campaign in MailChimp or something, somebody downloads a lead magnet, and then you send this email after 1 day, 2 days, send this email. If they reply, if this, that, and that, that is an automation, and that's been around for ages. And essentially what we're sort of driving at with agents is saying, how can we specify an automation? I want it to do this through to this workflow. And, if you imagine like you might have a chatbot, for example, when you do that with an automation, you probably give it like 2 or 3 answers to give. That was how you would do it up until before AI. And you'd have to think about what the possible answers are. And that, for someone with ADHD, seems like a big, massive headache. And there's probably a lot of people listening that have got automation software, but just really can't be bothered to map it all out.
It's a huge job to map these things out as well. Look, apart from anything, there's neurodivergence. We don't see things from anything other than our own frame of reference. It's not the fault in our program. That's just the way we do it. So how can we possibly anticipate people's questions to the extent we need to when we can't see the questions because we know the answers? So why would anybody ask that question? So it does require like a lot of sort of help to actually program it in the first place.
And I think that is the key. And I think that anybody thinking, people probably clicking on ads and seeing things on social posts that, LinkedIn, that AI can run your business. It's only going to be able to run your business if it knows how you run your business. And I suppose a lot of the common trap that a lot of people with ADHD who are running their business is that only exists in your head. And if you can't tell somebody else how you run your business, you can't tell AI how to run your business. So I suppose it comes back to that process of creating SOPs in your business. If you can create an SOP, you can then train an AI on that and have a lot more success than what a lot of people might be doing, which is just every day they go on, start a new chat, ask it something, and then ChatGPT, it just wants to impress you by keep going, shall I do this? Shall I do this? And it gets so far away from what you originally wanted to do that you might be forgiven for thinking, well, I've tried ChatGPT and it's rubbish. And like you say, you got reservations about it, but it can be a lot better if you are a bit more strategical about how you use it.
Absolutely. So one of my clients are doing something really powerful in terms of building chatbots. So she's autistic with ADHD, but a lot more autism than the ADHD. So it's interesting to see how that balances out in different people's profiles because she's able to capture stuff, but the ADHD is a memory issue. So what she's doing is with her support worker is building out these SOPs, guidelines, rules around the brand to populate chatbot specific things. So she's created one that is a problem solver. So when she goes and says, hi, this is the problem that my organization is facing today. Based on what you know about us, how would you go about this? And it's got all kinds of things about how they like to do their customer care, how they like to post on social media, what their brand voice is. So if it's going to draft an email, it sounds like her the first time. It's things like if they're doing fundraising bids, there's a separate one for fundraising bids that knows all about their objectives, all about the past successes. But then it can say, right, okay, you're writing for this one, mention this here, and it gives the right answers. But it does require a library of information to work from. Because if you don't give it a library, it's just going to pull from the open source language model. You could get absolutely anything out of that. And that's quite scary.
Yeah. And so just thinking about, I mean, we mentioned agents, but I think we'll see if we've got time to get onto those, we can towards the end. But I think we can get a lot of practical tips for this conversation, just talking about what can be done in something like that we've probably all got, which is ChatGPT. So thinking about those SOPs that you might have or some documents for knowledge base. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about going beyond that, just click and chat and start maybe talking about what a custom GPT is or even a project folder and how we can use those to be more specific and more useful with ChatGPT.
Yeah. So I think the first thing for a neurodivergent person is it's great to have your own custom sort of GPTs, having like folders for your product, all these different things, but there are people out there who've already done the legwork to get you started. You do not need to start from scratch with this. There's people like Damian Siukas, for example, who's put together a whole list of starting points like social media marketer, all these different things. So they've got a lot of the background knowledge. You just need to feed it about your business. It's got the background knowledge to know about the platforms, to know about all these different things. It's an absolute waste of anyone's time to try and build that from scratch. Because you can get your hands on other people's starting points for free or very cheap.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time trying to do the first 10% of this.
So in terms of, so let's just sort of, so for anybody that doesn't know, like a custom GPT is basically a chat, it's a little chat that you can create that has sort of guardrails in it. If you've got the premium account, you can create your own chat GPTs and you've probably got access to everybody marketplaces like the ones that you just said. And that process of creating a custom GPT is uploading documents to it that tell them about your business, but then specific things about what the process of what it wants to do, like an SOP.
You have to treat it like a 5-year-old, essentially. If you're going to do a custom GPT, you have to treat it like it's a 5-year-old that doesn't know anything about the thing. And you have to give it all of the information that it needs to do a job, like you would an employee, but further back. When you get an employee, you assume base knowledge. But with a custom GPT, it's pulling from so much and also nothing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be very specific about your business, and it's having these knowledge files. If you haven't got SOPs, it's going to be really hard to start that, because you need to have that base knowledge captured somewhere to feed to it.
Yeah.
And it's a big job. It's a worthwhile job if you do it, but it is a lot of work to do from scratch. And there are benefits to building it as the first thing. You know, if you're going to do fundraising, it is a great idea to have a custom GPT built around what your objectives are.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, I say SOPs a lot. I think we probably said SOPs a lot in our last episode. But for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's like a checklist of how to do a specific task. Again, for someone with ADHD, creating one of those sounds like a massive headache. But you're probably familiar with the tool Scribe.
Where the click by click.
Yeah. So basically, you just sit there and perform the task, and it's taking screenshots as you do it. And then at the end of it, it sort of annotates it up like someone has just made a really well thought out, detailed SOP. So essentially, there's a shortcut to creating those horrible but really important documents.
There is not, I think with things like that, like Scribe, the day I discovered Scribe was one of the best days of my life, because a lot of my clients have memory retention issues. So if I show them a task on a call and set Scribe away, it was documented straight away. You could use that as a starting point and feed it to ChatGPT, for example, and say, can you turn this into a written SOP, or if you need to have a policy around it, for example, and it can write your policy out based on what you've done. So if you're struggling to get these SOPs in the first place, use something like Scribe to get your guide and then get it to write the policies around that. Like, you can use it. Like, have you come across Notebook LM?
I don't know. Oh, excuse me. What is that?
So basically, Notebook LM is something that Google brought out quite recently, which essentially you can create a knowledge base by feeding everything you have into Notebook LM. But what it can do is it can actually have two voice models talk about the information you've given. So it's like almost like it makes a little podcast out of your stuff. So if you say to it, like, tell me everything you know about this thing that our company does, it sounds like people are having a conversation about it. But what it's really good for doing is highlighting gaps.
Yes.
So if you don't know your blind spots, you can feed it stuff and it'll start talking about what you fed it. And they'll be like, oh, it's missed that. Yeah. And it'll help you to fill in gaps. Like, I genuinely have a lot of love for AI. I just feel like so many of us aren't getting what we need out of it.
That's it. I mean, it's good for, that blank page. And if it does produce something, it can sometimes be better at making things more concise than you'd say it. But if it gets something wrong, then you can say, oh, actually, no, it's not that. And you can correct it, as long as you take the time to sort of review what it says and check it, and don't just send or use whatever comes out. I do, you were talking earlier about it's possible to make shortcuts, and there's lots of tools already out there. A lot of the fun that I've been having is like looking at how to make things from scratch. And one of the good things that I found is to give the AI a role and literally say, you can say, look, hey, ChatGPT, you are an expert AI engineer, and you are, I am your client and I want to build this. What questions would you ask me? If you ask it, what questions should it ask me? Then it will ask you questions. If you tell it to do something, it will do it. And if your knowledge is narrow and not broad enough, then you're not utilizing what it is that you don't know. So it's always good to ask it put it in an expert position and ask it what questions to ask, and then sort of narrow it down. And with that, I've built a custom GPT builder. So if you create your SOP, you can say, right, I want to upload this. I'm going to upload this, and you're going to turn it into the documents that I need to create the custom GPT. So it comes out with the knowledge document that you put in, and also the instructions to say this step and then stop. And so that's a cool way to make custom GPTs. But like you say, there are a lot out there already. And also I've made a custom GPT that produces, you've heard of the business model canvas?
Yeah.
So like the business model canvas is like a really succinct way of describing what your business does and how it all operates. And so you can basically go and sort of look at your website and say, is this your business model canvas? And you go, yeah, that's pretty much it. And the value proposition and everything. And then you've got pretty much like a document then that you can then put inside your custom GPT alongside the SOP, the job you want it to do. And that's a whole lot more trained than up a chat and saying, hey, can you produce a blog post or whatever?
Yeah. And this thing, I think a lot of people don't realize that when you start a new chat, anything you've told before isn't in that chat. So if you've spent a lot of time having one chat and feeding it a lot of stuff about your things, and then you start a new one, you lose all of that. So it's very important that if we're going to use it, we need to be strategic and understand what it is that we are doing with these chats before we even go there. And I think this is where a lot of people have fallen down, because I think people think that, oh, well, it's in my account, I'm just having a chat with it. Yeah, but you're using a different chat to last time.
Yep.
You spend time uploading documents, all that stuff. And actually that's not captured in the new chat. So you'd have to either re-upload it all or you need to use the previous chat. And there was somebody on my Facebook a little while ago, very intelligent woman, a very successful woman, was getting really frustrated with ChatGPT because she's forgotten everything I've ever told you. I said, well, yes, son, because you've opened a new chat, babes. That's why. Yeah. Oh, and it was just this moment of, it was just total just ADHD brain glitch. Yeah. Where, oh my God, as if I've done that. But it's like, from a neurodivergent perspective, I think we didn't do enough learning in the beginning with our AI. We just kind of like, oh, this is a fun thing. Let's have a go of it. I mean, the problem is that I think in some ways we're too reliant on it because we're trusted to validate our ideas.
Yeah.
And actually, what I love about what you said there is getting it to ask us questions, because I think getting it to ask us questions so that we can feed it information, but then also getting it to fill in the blanks isn't a bad thing. I also think it needs to be asking us, and how do you feel about this? Because if ChatGPT said, oh my God, it's the best thing I've ever seen, right? If you've asked it to reply to you like your drunk bestie, it's going to tell you the best thing it's ever seen. So it might be pulling on old information that you've got, trends and stuff. And I just think more of us need to be leaning on our own intuition, how we feel about the things we're creating, and not letting the language model do too much of that. It's great having it create documents for us. It's great having it put factual information together. But we still need, if we're using chatbot-based stuff, to actually validate that and make sure that we're okay with what it's producing, because our work at the end of the day is things that we're putting into the world. We need to be happy with the outputs.
Yeah. I sometimes, as well as sort of asking it what questions it would ask me, I also, if I've put a lot of information into it, I ask it to be not critical, but I ask it to constructive criticisms. Yeah, can you suggest anything that I've missed, or that anything that you don't feel is valid or whatever in it? And yeah, and it still starts out with a positive. It does know how to do a shit sandwich. It's like,
I love a shit sandwich. Shit sandwich is my favorite way of giving feedback, by the way.
But it does say, but you do. If I was to be critical, then X, Y, and Z, and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I think just like you say, understanding that unless it has got, if you just give it free rein, it's just going to try and impress you and go off the rails, and that's not necessarily what you want. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the latest thing is on projects, because project folders in ChatGPT are slightly different to a custom GPT. But there is one sort of frustrating flaw with a project folder. So you can create a project folder, and then a custom GPT, you can upload documents and give it some instructions. And then you can have many chats within it. Now, it would stand to reason that those different chats would be aware of each other. And at the moment, they're not. So quite do what potentially it could. But I don't know if they've got any intention to make that a possibility in the future.
Yeah, I don't know. And I really hope they do, because it's like the project folder holds the knowledge base. That's where all the information is. All the chats are pulling from that knowledge base. But it would make sense that the chats will speak to each other. This is something that Sintra doesn't do very well. Sintra gives you 12 AI employees. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fabulous. Like, I love my Sintra more than ChatGPT. But the chatbots don't talk to each other. You populate the brain AI with the knowledge base. And what's really cool about Sintra, they ask you questions every day about your business so you can give it more information. The chats don't communicate. So if you're having a chat with Vizi, the virtual assistant, and then you go to Xiaomi, the SEO person, they're not communicating. And that is a really big flaw with these, multiple chats in one thing, because of the fact that we're having these conversations with different personalities, if you like, different employees. it's like there's no intranet connecting the employees together, if you think of it like a workplace. And I really hope that some of these models do find a way around that, because that is the biggest stumbling point for me, is that I need them to talk to each other and they just don't.
So I've thought about this as well. And this is one of the reasons why I sort of chose to sort of build a few things by myself. Sorry, I've just hit the mic. By myself is because if you use Sintra, I've got Sintra as well. If you use somebody else's custom GPT, you don't really have access to the documents that go into it. So you can't update it with stuff that has changed. And so if you have created your own custom GPT and you've got different GPTs for different things, but let's say you've created your business model canvas document that you put in each of them so it knows what your business is. If you are governing your knowledge-based documents and keeping it up to date, if anything changes strategically, you can update that document and then upload that to all those GPTs. And so it gets around the fact that it talks to them and they're not talking to each other, but they're updated. And I do also think about, because I'm going a bit too far now, but like how, when you're in a company and there's lots of people using stuff, if you have a custom GPT, everyone can use that custom GPT.
Yeah.
But if you have a custom GPT on your own computer that only you use, you can get it to do agent stuff. Like you can go and get it to call something. If you're getting it to do shared stuff on Google Workspace or whatever, but it can actually start to do stuff on your machine if it's got the API to connect it. But that's something you can't really do if you're using somebody else's GPT. Yeah. But I think at that point, you're sort of reaching the limits of what ChatGPT can do before you go up to the next level, which is something like a platform like NAN, where you're basically it's connecting to all these tools and doing it, and that's another beast.
It is indeed. And you know what it is? Like, it's something that I am honestly very actively immersing myself in right now, because the thing is that my clients, I know that what we do as virtual assistants is highly valuable, but also if we don't get with the program, we are going to be out of the market within 5 years, because AI is growing in the way it is. So I'm really excited for my call with Autumn AI to learn about what they're doing, because I think agentic AI is going to be the future. Using agents to do specific things like booking your calls, or like just having one that just books calls, or having one that just unsubscribes from spam emails, or having different ones that do different things, like putting things into your project management software. That is definitely the future. And I think what I'm really excited to learn is how to make these work for my clients so that they can use that in their businesses. Because the main stumbling block for people with neurodivergence is back-end admin, because we don't get any dopamine from it. Yeah. And the back-end admin is boring. But guess what? AI agents don't have a concept of boredom, because they are not human. They have one specific task where they do that and they do that. And you feed them the information so that they can do that well. They'll learn as they go. So if need to adapt things, you can. What I'm interested in is how the guardrails are set up for something like that, so it just does that one task. Because obviously we know AI is quite expansive. I'm intrigued to know and understand more about how these are boundaried, how we make sure that they are still learning, but keeping it very in a tight shell, if you like, because we want them to learn, but we also don't want to have to keep going in there and modifying them because they're going rogue. And I think there's a lot of potential for these things to go rogue, right? Like we've seen how ChatGPT has, done some pretty interesting things in terms of acting as a psychotherapist and coaching people towards suicide. We've seen this happen. So if open source language models can do this, like the agents only need to do a specific role. We need to make sure that if things are working autonomously and automated, that they have these stops and checks and balances in place so that they don't, because the last thing you want to be doing as a neurodivergent is having to dig at the back-end admin because the back-end administrator has gone wrong, right? Yep. So I'm really intrigued to learn more about this. It's probably kind of new in terms of what my knowledge base is. Mine has always been sort of, I'm very good at the generative engine type stuff, but the agentic stuff is still quite new in my knowledge base. And it is something that I know I need to be a huge sort of adopter of to make sure that my business is future proof, because people are going to replace me with that thinking it's the same thing.
So, I think just to go back to the sort of the thing that you were just saying about what the danger is of letting it go rogue. I think another thing as well that we're not stopping to sort of think and question is some of the information that is going into some of these custom GPTs that we might be making for ourselves or people have made and are selling is IP. Where have they written that all themselves, or are they just ripped off somebody else's book or whatever? And so there's a lot of that going on without a lot of sort of thinking about what this is doing for the people that have created those in the first place. But in terms of, I think the exciting thing about sort of looking at your own business and going full circle back to where we started in terms of sort of saying how lots of different platforms are having AI built into them. I think like a good blueprint of how you might be able to look at your business as a whole and how you can integrate AI into that is to look at the tools that you use, but what AI capabilities they've got, those good ones. Like, for example, I use Go High Level for my CRM, and that's got really good sort of AI tools in it for doing outreach or picking up conversations from Instagram or whatever. And then it already has the workflows for pipelines, and you can upload knowledge documents into that. So if you're thinking as your business as a whole, what are the knowledge documents that I need to communicate to a new employee or an AI employee about how my business works, is to set those up and then think, but which different tools can I upload these into? Go along your whole pipeline or customer journey and think, at which points do I need, like, how much can this tool do? Where do I need to go to build something in ChatGPT or use something in GPT? And then I suppose what we're talking about with the agents is how do you then connect all of those in an umbrella where you say, once that has done that, grab that information from here, send it up to this knowledge base in the sky, and then go and perform a task in the next tool. And I mean, it sounds simple, but it's a lot of work. And this is the thing. In order to make all that happen, you've got to go back and do some very sort of human work, which is sitting down. If you're sitting down with someone or with a piece of paper or a whiteboard or a digital whiteboard and say, what is the ABC? What is the journey that I want something to go on before you can start? You can't just sit down at ChatGPT and say, oh, can you make my business work?
Oh, no, you can't. And the thing is, as well, is that, like, it is a big piece of work to do, but it's a very valuable piece of work to do anyway. Even if you are not populating a chatbot with how to run your business, something I've learned in scaling in the way I have in the last 5 years is that if you don't have robust systems and procedures in place, you're setting yourself up to fail. We've had to do quite a lot of reactive stuff because my business blew up overnight and it was the scariest thing, and I'm still catching up from that. But like, we had to get things like HR policies in process. You wouldn't hire someone without having basic HR policies. So why are we deploying AI into our businesses without giving it the rules first? That really baffles me in a lot of ways, but there is this human piece that needs to be done because we are the lifeblood behind our business. Our AI needs to be reflective of who we are and how we want to do things. And I think the best advice I would give anyone is pick a tool that you like and work with that tool almost exclusively. Not exclusively, but almost. So like, you go high level, work with high levels in greater, but build on that and work on that. Use ChatGPT to, generate some of the stuff you feed into that. But really, try not to stray out with those two tools. For me, we use ClickUp, and I love ClickUp. I don't love their AI. I really don't love it. So what I do, things like that, is like templates and stuff. But what I do is create my knowledge base using some of my Sintra stuff, and then populate that in a wiki in ClickUp. So ClickUp has got a wiki on how to run my business. So that if I go to use another tool in future, I've got my knowledge base captured and I can put that into a new tool. And it's got everything from how often I want to post on social media, what I want to post about, right down to who replenishes a first aid kit. So one day that might be relevant to AI, but right now it's relevant to the humans. And we need to treat the AI as we would a human employee. You wouldn't deploy an apprentice if I go and do social media marketing when they haven't done any of the qualification.
Yeah.
So why are we getting AI with just got limited knowledge of our business and giving it tasks to do like that? I think we need, like, when it comes to programming these things, we need to start, like I say, building it up like it's a 5-year-old, explaining it really simply so that we've got a good starting point to go from. It's a huge piece of work we're doing because neurodivergents hate the admin.
Yeah.
But in order to get to the point where we have things that can do things for us, we need to give it the brain juice first. And that is never going to be, there isn't a quick hack or a tip for this, because there's never going to be a quick and easy way of doing it. But you can harness the chatbot stuff to capture some of it to make that a little bit easier.
Yeah. I think as well, I mean, you talking about having a wiki in ClickUp, and that's something I think is really useful. I mean, I've been using Notion, but I really love ClickUp as well. And I think I probably want to move across to ClickUp a little bit. But maybe let's just say you're using ChatGPT to create post ideas or a content calendar. There might be 2 or 3 people in your business doing that in the marketing department or whatever. It's really useful. Like we were saying, if you're using a custom GPT, they can all use that. But what happens if you're using it just on your computer? You said a wiki, but what if you had here's all the posts that we created for Instagram, for LinkedIn, Facebook, and keep them in a database. So, and as you build that up, you can maybe keep a record of what posts went well and what didn't. And so when you go and say, right, I need to write a post for this, you can grab one of the successful ones and say like this, because it's always works better if it knows what you're aiming for. And then, I mean, it gives you a sense of, reflecting on what is working and what isn't as well.
And I think, you could use AI to gather that information up. You could say to your chatbot, look at this social media profile. Based on everything that we've posted in the last 6 months, what should I be posting about? There's tools that do that. What is it? Clue Labs, they've got a thing where it looks at your social content, looks at what's going well, and it makes suggestions for it. That's an AI-based platform that looks at your metrics. Inga Hunter's done a great job of, there are so many tools right now that have AI built in that can do these jobs. One of my bigger sort of worries is that we are using too many different things. And it's so easy to go near a shiny object, exactly, because we like dopamine, we like things to be novel and exciting. So we go with these things. And like you say, with Notion, I used Notion for ages, but the problem I had is that you can really rabbit hole on that, right? You can go so in depth and build I've got an if I die thing built in Notion with my advanced directives and stuff and all of my financial account information. So if I died tomorrow or if I was incapacitated, you would know what to do with my end of life care. You would know how to cancel my credit cards, who my car insurance with, all that's captured, right? But I built all of this and then never used it again, right? So what I like about ClickUp is, as a system, is that it's for me, it feels like if Notion and Asana had a genetically perfect baby, but what I like is that you can change what the interface looks like so you can keep that novel piece going.
Yeah.
So I've never had to change tools from that because of the fact I can create new and exciting within that.
Yeah.
Problem is that it's something new and exciting is that we go with this tool and actually realize ClickUp already had that built.
Yeah.
So I think trying to keep our tools to a minimum and focus our efforts. If we're going to be working with AI, focusing our efforts into the tools, then we need to invest and stick to that, which is hard. Neurodivergents don't like that. But if we are going to be investing time and building these AI models, we need to really be focused on where we're doing this. We're not wasting time. We are the queens of wasting time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it goes back to what I was saying before about going back to a piece of paper and a whiteboard, is to literally spend that time mapping out your business and what a successful business, from acquiring a client for them, onboarding them, delivering something for them, making them come back, and then reaching out to new prospective leads and everything. You can map that all out and say, right, what tools do I need for that? Agnostic of what you've just seen in your feed and what somebody said on LinkedIn, is just say, what do I need to make this work? And then start from there. I think we are terrible for shiny object syndrome. And I mean, you need to look at my subscription bills. It's insane.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I went through about 2 months ago just to have enough because I thought, oh my God, I've left my boyfriend. I need to make sure I'm not wasting money because I need to buy the house. And when I went through, I was spending 35 quid on TV channels on Amazon. Excuse me. When did this happen? I've purely bought to watch a TV show, paid for a subscription and just forgotten about 35 quid with them. And we do this with software all the time in our businesses, and we're wasting money, we're wasting our time, we're dividing our efforts. If our efforts are really focused and really channeled, and we let our hyper-focus go on just one tool that we are happy with and committed to, we can accomplish some great things. But I think the reason people aren't making the progress they want to make with their AI is that they're trying to do it in too many places.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things, I have to say, Copilot. I wasn't a fan of Copilot at first.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, okay? But I have a client who works for the government and uses AI for things like grammar and accuracy checking. But the problem is when you work for the government, you can't just feed government secrets into ChatGPT. If you're feeding them like the energy policies, for example, that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really cool about the Intel Core Ultra processors is that the AI is held inside the computer. So it can pull down from the internet, but it doesn't push back out again. So what's really cool about what they've done for her is get her a laptop with the Intel Core Ultra. I think she's got an i7. I've got an i9 in mine because I need something that can keep up with all of this.
Yeah.
But if she can feed anything she wants into her Copilot, but it doesn't take it back up to the internet. So as much as it's pulling down from the language model, it doesn't take her secrets back to it. And what we were saying before about the intellectual property, but also GDPR, I've seen it where people have fed their client database at ChatGPT, and that's now public information. That is so scary. Like, we're feeding our best ideas, our best brain source, our creative, novel ideas into something that other people can pull down from. The first thing we need is make sure the language model that we're using is secure enough to deal with what we want it for. Like, before so many of us even got started on AI, we should have known a lot more. And I think now people are being a bit more careful because they're hearing the horror stories. They're seeing the consequences of people screwing it up. But AI was very much a thing that appeared overnight, and it was exciting and it was great. And people were writing sea shanties for their enemies. Okay, that might have been me, to be clear. But I wrote a sea shanty for a guy who was bullying me online. It was one of the funniest things in the world. But we've leaned into this tool for our day-to-day operations without really knowing things like basic data security. We've got, I think, as a population, we've got so much to learn about AI. The general person's knowledge of how to use it safely is very weak.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest takeaways is make sure you know what the tool that you're using. Make sure you know the rules before you start giving it anything.
And that's it. I mean, it's like a balance between, I want to be cautious about privacy and information and everything, but also I need to keep up. So there's a desperation to launch into it as well. So it's exciting. It's daunting at the same time, but enjoy exploring. It feels like a bit of a playground, but I think, once it settles down, we can really do some interesting things. Even just like you say, like from a neurodiverse point of view, just helping to say, help me break this problem down. Or if you can get like an agent that knows like your whole sort of life, and it can say, yeah, that's a great idea. I can help you break that down. You've also got 17 other things. So shall we park that?
Yeah. Have you come across Goblin tools before?
Don't think so.
Oh, Goblin's great. So one of my clients uses it quite a lot because one of her biggest problems is like sequence and steps for things, right? So you say to Goblin, I need to write a social media post, and it breaks it down into steps for you. So that's really cool. But again, it's a separate tool. So it's like, how do we get these things to be emulated in the platforms that we want to use? There are so many useful things for AI. But I think the reality is if we don't keep up with what's going on with it, our businesses are going to be obsolete because our businesses need us to embrace the trends. The trend became being online for your business. So everyone had to get on board with social media marketing. The trend was we need to use AI, and we all just started using ChatGPT like it's our new bestie. And it's hard to keep up with trends, but if we don't do it and don't do it safely, we are going to have businesses left over to see the outcomes of it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to wrap it up there. But it is, I mean, I feel that we could carry on talking for ages on this, and it will be very exciting to see sometime in the future where, any exciting things that you come up with. It would be great to have you back. But yeah, thank you so much for geeking out with me.
I love it. Like, I'm the biggest nerd in the world. Like, I get so excited. When I had my autism assessment, I was talking about these things and I'm going like this. And I've previously said to the woman, I don't stim. And I'm sitting here flapping my hands like, nerdy makes me stim.
Yeah. Right. Cool. Well, thanks, Steph, for joining me. And just to remind everybody where they can reach you online.
Yes. Find me on Instagram. I am CEO.SpicyBrainCollective. I'm also on Facebook as Stephanie Stevenson Ward, Stevenson with a V. And yes, I know my name is Stephanie Stevenson for a while. We don't take the mick out of me. You can also find my website at thespicybraincollective.com.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much and take care.
Thank you very much.
Well, there we have it. Thank you so much for listening this far. If you want to hear more episodes, then please subscribe on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you use. It really helps to spread the word. So if you know anyone this episode could help, then please share it with your friends. If you want to follow me on social media, I am on Instagram at ADHD_goals, and you can find me on Facebook too. If you want to get in touch with the show, then you can email me at hello@adhdgoals.co. And finally, if you're struggling to manage your ADHD and you would like me to be your coach, then please head over to my website and get in touch. Until next time, bye for now.